Hey guys, how's it going? Dragonstar here. Today I'm gonna show you guys something which I think should not have been shared. I was debating for a very long time if I should actually show this to you guys, but since I'm gonna be streaming full time, I'm basically revealing all my secrets. This is probably one of the most strongest things in DE, and it is how to find your opponent. It might seem simple, but the method I'm going to show you currently is something I was taught by Red Phosphorus. He is the one who kind of theorized and brought it, and this is like one of the best ways of scouting that I have figured out on finding your opponents. Asking him and getting his knowledge about how to do it. Starting off with the game, we'll discuss over the scouting pattern of finding your opponent. The traditional method for scouting usually is to rely on that minimap TC orbit. We are going to do that, but there's an additional step on top of this. So you go for a straight line across the map. Wherever your town center spawns in the center of the map, you just take that, make a diagonal line from that town center to the other side of the map. Wherever that diagonal takes you in a straight line, just follow along that. So let's go for it. I'll speed up a little bit. And let's wait for our scout to find our opponent. Most of the time, you'll be wondering, your opponent can spawn there, there, or there. Those are your three common spots where your opponent can spawn, but we're always going to choose the one in the middle. And the reason is because you're most of the time going to hit your opponent when you go for the scouting in the middle, because you will see indicators of where your opponent is based on your map layout. So this time I was able to actually get the hit, and I'm able to find my opponent. Whenever I see berries, I know I found my opponent. And this might feel like a coincidence. Okay, I got lucky. I scouted down the center line and I'm able to find my opponent. This is 1 minute into the game and I've already discovered where my opponent's town center is. I'll repeat it again. And whenever the pattern breaks, there is an explanation on how to do it. So I'll speed it up, put it on 4 times speed. This is the line. I'll go for a diagonal. And as soon as I get near like 60-70% near my opponent's base, I'll check for extra resources. So this is a 4 tile gold, which means my opponent is again in a diagonal. And yep, I'll just continue down this path and I have found my opponent. See, like usually in the olden days where map scripts were a little bit more random, it was not as common to find your opponent diagonally across. But in the new map script for Arabia, we are seeing your opponent spawn diagonally across your town center more often. And whenever there is a pattern break, there is a few tricks to actually figure out which direction to take if your opponent is not spawning in the center. So I load up a couple more maps and see if the pattern breaks if my opponent is not spawning in the center. And I'll discuss how to actually find your opponent if that actually happens. But I just keep getting my opponent diagonally across. And this is 80-90% of the time, this is how you actually find your opponent. The 10% of the time where your opponent does not really spawn like this, I'm able to find the resources, by the way. This is also an amazing way of laming your opponents. You just go diagonally across and then make a circle around his town center. I'm able to find him. You find one of these extra golds, which is 4 tiles of stone. You see the berries or something, and you'll figure out where your opponent is. I'm trying to spawn a map where the diagonal is not happening so that I can explain how to find him if he spawns somewhere else. And we go diagonally across. What? 1 sec. And our opponent is there. I was gonna say this is the 4 tile gold, so our opponent should just be in this direction, and I found him. I can repeat this basically every game. Like I can just load up a different map script, go diagonally across. Like my town center is over here, so I'll go diagonally across the map in a straight line. And okay, now we finally have a situation where it's actually not spawning in a diagonal. How do I figure out which direction to take to find my opponent? That is the big question. The way you actually try to figure that out is by looking at the hills on the map and the extra resources. So you went to a diagonal, there's a 3-tile stone, which means it's a neutral stone. Nobody of you has the access to it. And you check for relics, and you check for woodlines, and you check for hills. So this is like a 5-tile hill going in this direction. There's a couple more hills on the left, and it feels like the map is having a decline on the south side. So if I have to pick a direction when I go to the diagonal and I do not find my opponent near the diagonal, you go for the flatter side. And the way you discover it, by looking at the indicators of the map. So there's an elevation towards this direction, there's an elevation going towards this direction, and there's a flat ground possibility in the south compared to a flat ground possibility in the north. It might feel a little bit random what I'm trying to explain, but there's a pattern to it. If you choose the flatter side to scout first, you'll always figure out where your opponent is. So I'll change direction and go towards the south, which is going to be a flat ground. And as soon as I run into a flat ground, I find my opponent. So this is the direction understanding. When you go in a diagonal and you do not discover your opponent, you look for where the potential hills can spawn on the map, on elevations can spawn on the map. If I look at this area, the hill is actually a little bit bigger on this side, and your opponent can spawn over there below the hill, but the elevation extends towards this area. So 9 times out of 10, if you follow how the elevation actually is ending at one area, will let you discover where your opponent is actually spawning. So this is the 5-tile stone, and I've already found my opponent. And I'll just suicide my scout. Diagonally across. And I'm able to find my opponent because this is a 4-tile gold, which means my opponent is gonna spawn on this side of the map. And this pattern is repeatable basically infinite number of times in the current generation of Arabia. Oh, that's the end of the explanation of how to find your opponent. Use this, exploit it since it's in the game. I am not sure if they are ever going to fix it, but until this is in the game, this is how you find your opponent as fast as possible. And that's it from me, guys. Hopefully you guys learned something, and I'll see you guys in the next one.